Welcome to Chatty AF, the Anime Feminist podcast. My name is Vrai. I'm an editor and contributor for Anime Feminist. You can find me on Twitter @WriterVry, and if you check my pinned tweet, you'll see all the places I freelance, or you can find the other podcast I'm on @TrashPod. With me today are Caitlin and Dee.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm a writer and editor for Anime Feminist, as well as having my own blog. I have a heroin problem, heroin with an E. I review anime for the Daily Dot, and I will be starting, it should be up by the time this podcast comes out, a King of the Hill Watchalong blog called Patriarch of the Knoll.
That's amazing. This is my first time hearing about this. Good. So
hard same.
I just made the Tumblr.
Congratulations. Well, I don't have any exciting news like that, but I'm Dee, the managing editor at AniFem. You can find all my writings on my blog, The Josei Next Door, and you can find me on Twitter @JoseiNextDoor.
And welcome back to our Rewatchalong of Escaflowne, which I can't believe we didn't think of right off the bat. Thank you, Peter, for that. That's what we're calling them now. It's a good title.
It was an obvious title, but yes, it is very good, too.
We overshot the
Clearly.
moon. We overshot the moon and went to the planet behind it. This time around, we're watching episodes 14 through 20, so we are officially in the thick of it, of the weird shit happening in this series. And because this is a series where everything happens so much, and yet it vanishes from your mind instantaneously, not unlike a man in a tan jacket, I have compiled a handy list of notes to refresh your memory as to what the heck happened over the course of these 7 episodes.
Good, because I need it.
Yeah, so you know how for Fushigi Yugi we coined the tagline, Fushigi Yugi, you will have an emotion? I'm pretty sure it's Escaflowne. Everything happens so much. I think that's what needs to be on the box for this one.
I think we need to incorporate the collective amnesia that Escaflowne fans always have into that for it to really work. Escaflowne, you will not remember.
That's unkind. Escaflowne already lives in Evangelion's shadow. It literally premiered right after it.
And we remember a lot about it, just not the plot points.
All right, so here we go. Van almost died after fusing with his with his guy Melf. We introduced Dryden, Millerna's fiance, who we didn't know about, and he was able to call in a bunch of Esperna engineers who I guess know how to fix the giant robots. We learned that there are blood packs, and this particular kind of Guy Mouth is special because the user dies if the robot is ever broken. Van goes into berserker mode because he has PTSD and murders all of Dilandau's crew. Hitomi is absorbed into the Escaflowne while trying to get out of him and dies again. Everybody has a crisis of feelings. Dilandau is not taking things well and gets carted off by a bunch of people known as the Alchemists. While he is gone, 2 of Folken's right-hand cat people show up, named Aria and Nuria. Everybody finds a path to the Mystic Valley using a journal that was left behind by Alan's father. We learn that Alan's father left his family because he was going to find this mystical valley, and also while he was there, he met Hitomi's grandmother, who was also spirited away to this other world several generations ago. Alan's dad was even more of a trash bag than previously estimated. As it turns out, Dilandau is being operated under something called a fate alteration experiment, which has implications about things. Meanwhile, everybody in the Mystic Valley is dealing badly. Van has so much PTSD. Alan's dealing with his daddy issues and the disappearance of his sister Selena many years ago, who he failed to save. As it turns out, Atlantis wasn't just a lost city, but our lost Atlantis, the one from Earth myth, and they made Gaia with the power of their magical thoughts and the big machine that they built that ruined them all. So that also means that the power to influence... God damn it, Dee! This also means that the power to influence things with your thoughts means that Hitomi has literally been cursing everyone by making her teenage anxieties real with her predictions, but it's okay because Van's mom shows up and tells them that it's okay, they just have to wish for a better future, and she gives a new energist to Van to put inside of Escaflowne. Then they all get magically, psychically transported to Dornkirk's throne room, and he gives them a big fucking exposition dump about how he was a philosopher on Earth, but he escaped to Escaflowne at the moment of his death because he wished so strongly to understand the nature of fate. And then they all escape, but oh no, Folken has a plan because he's going to love Dr. Fate into a different arrangement by just feeling emotions really hard until Hitomi and Alan kiss at an inopportune time and Van sees it, meaning that Hitomi and Van are separated and she is prime for kidnapping. And there is, oh no, a romantic misunderstanding. Nuria and Aria have a flashback about how they were sad children until Folken saved them and brought them over to his cause, and in order to be more helpful to him, have luck blood transferred into their veins, which is a thing. So now they're practically unbeatable. Meanwhile, during all of this, Millerna gives up on her feelings for Alan in order to marry Dryden, her fiance, believing it will be the best thing for the kingdom, but uncertain, she asks Hitomi to give her a reading to see if this is really the right thing that she'd be doing, and Hitomi, confused about her feelings for Alan, gives a false reading saying that the marriage will be good despite seeing portents of doom, and because she does this, Folken is able to stage an attack on the wedding, and they all demand that Hitomi be turned over to the Zybok Empire, which she does because she feels guilty and she is a sad teenager. End of episode 20.
Oh, God damn it.
I did warn you guys, this episode might just be me cackling hysterically for a solid hour. Also, Vrai, I'm pretty sure it took a solid hour to summarize the plot, so thank you for listening to this episode of Chatty AF. We hope you liked it, and if you...
We're done. Everything happens so
much.
See... Next time, try doing it all in one breath.
So yeah, I did warn that it was going to get buck wild.
I used to be able to do that shit in high school. Like, so much happens. Everything happens so much. So how did you like it?
It was good.
Yeah, there was, I think, quite a bit higher ratio of anime bullshit in this stretch than in previous stretches. And I didn't remember a lot about it except that it was going to get buck wild. But I think the show does just enough with kind of winking at the fact that it's doing anime bullshit that it sort of works, and I wound up having a pretty good time, even though it was doing a lot of stuff that would normally just make me want to throw stuffed animals at my television.
Mm-hmm. I agree. The thing is that there were real anime bullshit moments, but those anime bullshit moments, which... The scene with Naria and Aria, where they were fencing.
Uh-huh.
And at first, I have no idea which one is which.
I think Aria is the gold one because she did the fake smooch scene.
Okay. So, I'm just going to go with that and hope that that's correct. Naria pins Aria and is like, oh, I want to know what Folken's lips tasted like. And it's weirdly horny and very uncomfortable because no twincest. Mm-hmm. Twincest is not allowed. It was very strange. But then, like, after that weirdness, like, they rolled over and, like, they started having a very genuine, like, kind of sisterly conversation. And then it's like, okay, actually, I really like this. The way they're talking is, like, actually very genuine, like, and feels kind of authentic. Having shared a room with my sister for my entire childhood.
Yeah, I feel like those two characters are responsible for at least 70% of the anime bullshit in this stretch of episodes, if we're honest. Because I also felt, like, distinctly uncomfortable with their sort of pet-like coded relationship to Folken. It's weird and uncomfortable, and the fact that they are like they have fur, but they're also some of the only visibly brown characters in the show. And like with the doppelganger we talked about last time, there's weird fantasy racism elements going on again, and whoops, you done fucked it up again. Honestly, when I was reading the manga, these are another set of characters that I forgot were in the anime. In the manga, they're slightly more obnoxious. Every word out of their mouth is a double entendre. It's very annoying, and then they die.
Yeah, they're given more development here for sure.
Like, the strokes of it are there, but I don't know. Aside of that one conversation, it falls kind of flat for me, because it's... they're characters who I feel like would work, character types that I have liked in other shows, but they have so little time, compared to everything else that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need, like, for them to have really worked, we needed more backstory on sort of how their the cat people work in the world of Escaflowne, because they were escaped slaves. They're the same species as Merle.
Right, and there's that one kind of interesting moment that never really comes back around where they spare Van because they see Merle, who I guess we know now is explicitly a child. Yes,
like Merle is young. So yeah, it seems like it seems like loyalty a thing with their particular species, or is that just a coincidence that they are very loyal to Folken and Merle is very loyal to Vaughn? Is it a thing about how those two inspire loyalty? Why were they being cornered like that? Why were they treated like wild things? Like, there's so many like unanswered questions about their background that it doesn't really work, and it makes their obsession with Folken it doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that they were the kind of, to me, they feel, them and the doppelganger character as well. I get the sense that somebody put thought into the kind of people they were, because they're not completely flat, right? There are glimmers in both of those very short arcs of like fully fleshed out people. But I get the sense that within the narrative itself, they are primarily there to show us stuff about Folken.
Like their flashback about being abused and escaping and almost dying is a vehicle to show us that Folken is kind.
Yeah, or that's what it's supposed to show us. And there is, again, this isn't really our lane, but there is a noted issue with having your marginalized characters exist primarily to forward the story of your, I guess in a way Folken and Vaughn are kind of marginalized because they are mixed race and Draconians are reviled. So there is a connection there. So I don't want to, I guess I need to acknowledge that. But it still doesn't quite sit right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't help that they are basically introduced because we carted off Dilandau for this arc and we need a mini boss antagonist.
Yeah, they need more time to work. I also remember how I was like, Folken's my favorite character and I really like him. I'm not sure I think that anymore. Mm-hmm. I think he maybe kind of sucks. I think the show wants us to like him. I think he's supposed to be kind of a tragic figure who is trying to do good and is fucking up a lot of people's lives in the process, which is interesting, but still kind of sucks.
I 100% see how he would have been like Teenage D's favorite character.
Oh, though, yeah. So. No, I mean, it tracks, right?
Right.
Yeah, and he is like, he is misguided for sure. He is not like a cackling villain. He's not pursuing selfish means, but he is still like, he messes up in some pretty significant ways that are not just like, he meant well.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically grooming child soldiers. And whether that was the intention, like, again, the show makes it, I think the show tries to make it clear that, like, he genuinely cares about them and is concerned about them. But does it make it better when the end result is still you're grooming child soldiers? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. This stretch, I was like, oh, damn, I used to really, really like you, and now I'm not so, now I'm much more conflicted.
And also that particular brand of anime bullshit where you have, like, multiple devoted foot soldiers, but the women are, like, specifically and exclusively termed it, like, their devotion is always romantic.
It's romance-coded, yeah. And I don't think, I think the series is pretty good about, I don't think Folken leads them on. Does that make sense? Like, I think the kindness he shows them is platonic. So there's that at least. But he also doesn't really make any effort to shut it down. And he has to know. They're not exactly subtle about how much they care about him. And the other thing, here's I think one of the bigger things, especially watching it now as a grown-ass adult, is if Folken were the same age or very close to the same age as Vaughn and Hitomi, I would cut him a lot more slack. But
that's a good point.
How old is he? Like, dude should probably know better, right? He's
25.
Gotta be, is he 30? He's probably in his, he's got to be in
25.
He's only 25. Okay.
He's the same age as Alan,
Sure.
really.
Sure, I believe that. And that's kind of the same thing with Alan, which we'll talk about him later. LOL. There's a lot that's interesting about their characters, and I'm not 100% sure how much the creators were aware of this when they decided to put that 10-year gap there, but there's a lot of slack I will cut a teenage character in an anime that I will not cut a character in their mid-20s.
Yeah.
And
well, because they're supposed to be able to make good decisions.
Yeah, and so
not terrible, poorly thought out teenage decisions.
Yeah, so there were moments in this stretch where I was like, did you guys realize that? Like, are we supposed to be harder on them, or are we supposed to sympathize with them the same way we do the teen characters? I'm not always sure what the intent was.
Given the way they try to spin Alan's dad, I think we're supposed to feel for them. Alan's dad is garbage, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, remember the part where he was pursuing a teenage girl.
He just wants to see this 15-year-old again, you guys. He has a child, like a 10-year-old child, but gosh, seeing that teenager again really filled him with life. Thanks, I hate it.
There are some kind of interesting ideas twirling around Alan's shitbag of a father, especially in terms of, like, we see this come up with Millerna too, that kind of conflict between what your duty, like what you're supposed to do with your life, like what's expected of you versus like what you actually want to do. And I think the way the series keeps kind of touching on that is interesting. I'm not 100% sure what they're trying to say yet. Like, I think I'm hoping in the last arc we'll get some more concrete like answers to, like, if the creative team will take a stance on some of this. But I think there's definitely an argument happening here about how trying to fit into a prescribed role screws you up down the road and screws up a lot of other people as well. Because, like, he ditches his family because he's like, well, no, the only reason I started a family in the first place was because that's what you're supposed to do.
Cool motive, still abandonment.
Right.
Yeah, and then I think you see that with Millerna. She's decided to marry Dryden, and there's this conversation Hitomi has with her about, but is that what you actually want? Like, do you actually care for him, or are you just doing this for like political reasons? And that's kind of Hitomi's whole thing this arc too, because when she's talking to Isaac Dornkirk, whatever you want to call him, he talks about, I've made all the people of Zybok happy by basically determining their fates for them. And Hitomi's like, well, no, I don't think you should do that. I don't think that like fabricated fate happiness is real. And she's very much about, she's 15 too, but like, she's very much about like following your heart. She's very passionate about that in this stretch. And I like that about her. And I'm curious to see if the show wants us to lean that direction, or if they're going to circle back around to like, no, sometimes you do have to do things for like, because it's the right thing to do, because it's the responsible thing to do. So I think there's that tension is
and
there,
that was sort of what I was thinking of when she was talking to Millerna. Like, Millerna is a princess. She has grown up with the reality that her marriage is primarily going to be for political reasons. And that's sort of something that always gets me in medieval-ish settings, is like, if they have been raised as like royalty or landed nobility, they have had like, marriage for love is not something that has really been part of their upbringing. Why is it treated as like something that's even possible? What I wanted Millerna was to turn around and say to Hitomi, like, this is what marriage is for in my world. Marriage is not about love, but that's not what Escaflowne is all about.
Yeah, I think it's because I was watching this video on Fight Club and fascism the other day, but I was definitely thinking about that quote about, the appeal of fascism being that it frees people from the terrible burden of choice, which is very much what Dornkirk is going for.
Yes. People make bad decisions if you let them decide things for themselves.
Like, ooh.
This sounds like another mecha anime that came out recently. Whether or not people should be allowed to choose things for themselves. It's planet with.
Yeah, I mean, this idea pops up a lot in, fiction in general, but I think you see it a lot in anime as well, because I think there's a historical tension, especially within the last, 50, 60 years, in Japan in particular, because arranged marriages and things like that stuck around longer there than they did here. So I think that you see that in 90s anime. I mean, this was coming out in the mid-90s. I think some of that tension is also coming from that sense of you grew up in a family that ran a shop, and so obviously you're going to run that shop, and that will be your future. And that kind of clashing up against more individualistic ideas.
Right, sacrificing your happiness for the good of the greater good of the group.
The greater good. Mm-hmm. Sorry, had to be done.
It was good. It was good. Thank you for that. But in this case, it was really hard. I got what they were going for. It was really hard for me because Dryden is clearly the better option.
Yes, that is true.
He has a couple of those Han Solo-y sleazebag lines about how I always get what I want. And
yeah.
But Jared said that Dryden looks like if Han Solo were really into philosophy.
Although
that's apt. No, that's apt.
Also, my mind melted out of my fucking head because Dryden's voice actor is also Akio Otori, is also Fernanda Morsef, meaning that fucking Gankutsuo is just one big Escaflowne reunion, you guys. I'm die. I'm die.
Yeah, once I realized that, I couldn't unhear it, too, and then I was like, I don't trust you, Dryden. What are you up to?
Aside of those surface lines, Dryden's interests align with Millerna's. He seems to genuinely care about her and what she wants to do.
He doesn't bullshit her with the courtly knight lines like Alan does. He's very straightforward. He's aware that she is intelligent and capable.
He could bring her weird medical textbooks from his trade route and be a good and supportive husband, and they'd be really cute, you guys.
Yeah, no,
but
Dryden is definitely the better catch. But she loves Alan. But she loves him. He
sees you as a convenient source of affection and adoration who looks kind of like his dead lover. This is a bad decision.
Yeah, no, Alan is garbage. He's a garbage man from the garbage.
I still like him.
And then I was feeling what you were putting down last time around, but as soon as he finds out that Millerna has rejected him, and then to fill that sad gap of, "Aw, I'm not getting compliments anymore," he goes and macks on Hitomi.
Two things. One, it is a literal forced romance created by a fanfic machine. If Hitomi is under its influence, then so is Alan.
Dornkirk really just wanted to make his ships real.
Yeah. Folken had an OTP, and it didn't look like it was going to be canon. He was like, fuck it, I'll do it myself. And he didn't just write fan fiction like the rest of us. He co-opted the story.
No, he LARPed it. He made his own YouTube video with the cat girls.
But my point being, I think if we're going to say Hitomi was definitely under the influence at that moment, and she was, I think we have to give that to Alan as well, because they're both stuck in this fanfic machine.
Yes.
I think it's just that 10-year gap.
It is, and
again.
the thing is, Alan's character design doesn't make him look 10 years older than them. Folken is clearly so much older than them, right? His character design makes him look like he's maybe a couple years older. And so I keep forgetting.
Right, 18 or 19.
So when I'm watching it, there's a part of my brain that's you're 10 years older, dude, you should know better. But then I keep forgetting that. And I keep jumping back into this, oh no, it's just that, your dad abandoned you and your mom died when you were really young and you lived in the woods hitting people with your sword because you had nothing better to do, and you're just so desperate to be loved that anybody who comes to you and says, I like you, you're like, yeah, okay, let's do it.
He is emotionally 16.
He really is.
Yeah.
And I can sympathize with that character arc, but again, it's one of those things where if I take a step back and go, wait, he's 25, I'm like, no, you still have to make better choices. I understand the desperation to be loved. I understand that you've lost a lot of people you cared about and you're very lonely, but you still need to make better choices. You're a grown-ass adult.
Yeah, it's a tough... it's amazing how one decision can completely skew the context because like Hitomi makes bad decisions this arc, but I forgive her because she's 15, and being 15 means being dumb a lot of the time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think any of us made all the best decisions when we were 15. Not that I didn't make bad decisions when I was 25. They were just a different kind of bad decision.
That's true.
So I still find Alan to be kind of an interesting character. I think the sort of the cyclical history stuff that we see with the past is pretty interesting with him, because he's super mad at his dad for abandoning his family, and I'm like, yo, you technically have a son
who you just kind of knew about and didn't do anything for, even from a distance.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think they would let him do anything for him.
He couldn't, but I think we're probably intended to see some parallels there. Maybe I'm reading too deeply into his character, but I think we're...
No, I mean, like, cycles are a big part of the show, so...
And so, like, you know, when he's shouting at his dad, there's probably a part of him, because we did see him, you know, give a lot of morose looks at Prince Sheed in those early episodes, so I wonder if a little bit of that is projection. But the other thing I kind of love about Alan is the narrative throws shade at him in these really amazing ways. Like, on the one hand, I think we're supposed to kind of sympathize with him. I think that I don't think the creators necessarily thought as hard as they should have about the fact that he's 10 years older than the other characters, which is why sometimes I have to just put that on a shelf and not engage with it when I'm watching the show. And fantasy universes will do that to me a lot, too, because ages are just different, because there's 15-year-olds fighting in wars and nobody thinks that's weird. So, but
cough cough, Tamora Pierce, cough cough.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a pretty common thing in fantasy series, and so that those like layers of unreality make it so I sometimes will ignore ages a little bit more than maybe I should. I admit that, but I think on another level, the narrative is kind of mocking him for... Vaughn and Hitomi are trying to acknowledge their past mistakes and move forward, and it feels like he just keeps doing the same thing over and over again. Like, he's stuck in the loop, whereas they're moving past it. And I think the narrative is kind of making fun of him for that, and I love it, because that part where they're fleeing, when they end up in Zybok and they're fleeing, and he steps in front of Hitomi and he draws his sword all noble and is like, "I'll protect you even if it costs me my life." And then Vaughn shows up immediately behind them on the dragon, and he's like, "Hitomi!" And Hitomi turns around, her face lights up like the sun has just shone out from behind the clouds, and she's like, "Vaughn!" and just jumps like onto the dragon, and Alan looks so annoyed that he didn't get to be the hero knight. Like, he's very much stuck in this role that nobody actually needs him to play anymore, and once again, like I said last week, I find it kind of pathetic and a little bit moe at times. So that's where I am with Alan, the trash bag.
Do you want to just pat his head and be like, "It's okay. You'll be relevant again someday."
I want to drag him out of that. I want to say, get your shit together. I think you've got some good points. I think that you've been a pretty good mentor for Vaughn sometimes, but, like, get your shit together. You're 25. Get your shit together. That's how I feel right now about Alan.
Meanwhile, Vaughn is dealing with just debilitating PTSD. And again, this show aired right on the heels of Evangelion and had been in development for like 2 years. So it's not copying Eva, but it's also trying to do the what if war had real psychological consequences thing in like a lesser, more fantasy grounded way, and just got totally ignored by everyone.
I mean, I wouldn't call it lesser.
I just mean that like there's less dialed in narrative focus on it comparatively. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. Not lesser as in qualitative, just quantitative.
Right. I guess, like, I personally, I really liked how they did it in this show, like, because the thing is that when he was in the in the Escaflowne, and the other soldiers were in the Guy Malefs, like, he could kill them. He didn't see them personally. But once he was able to, like, really merge with the Escaflowne, and he could, like, started having these visions of the people that he killed, and then all of a sudden he has to deal with the fact that he has killed people. He wasn't just fighting other robots. He was ending lives, and that they were in their last moments scared and hurting, and he was the one who did this, and it breaks him. And is, maybe it's not as grounded as Evangelion, but
I mean, again,
I thought that was a really good part of his arc, and sort of seeing, and an important thing for him to realize, for him to really be a fully sympathetic character. And it's kind of cliche, but I think that the way the show handled it was really good.
Yeah.
And very distinct.
Yeah, I like I think there's, the sort of metaphorical, sort of cutscenes you get. The dream visions were a nice way to address it directly, but also sort of poetically. I really appreciate that one of the main issues is that he won't admit it or talk to anybody about it. And it's only when he finally does that he starts to get better. He's willing to reach out to Hitomi and work together and kind of share that burden. And I like that element of, not just ignoring your fear and saying, no, I'm fine, everything's fine. Like, he talks about it, and that's where the next step is. It also helps that Seki Tomokazu acts the absolute fuck out of those scenes, because he's amazing. He's very, very good in those moments. So,
also,
Absolutely.
Side note that I meant to bring up last time, but I guess I'll bring it up now. Escaflowne ran on TV for like a hot minute in 2000 on Fox Kids. Yeah, and it only made it. I've heard conflicting reports because I've seen recovered audio of the dub all the way up to episode 20, but supposedly it stopped airing right after episode 12, which coincidentally which is why I brought it up now, right before Vaughn goes on his extremely gory murder rampage. And like, there are conflicting reports that it was partially because, those first that first set of episodes is fairly action heavy, and then this one is all about feelings and romance, and oh no, that's for girls and we can't market that anymore. But I feel like the just alarming amount of blood and truly horrific violence might have played a part. Aside of, I brought up the inevitable comparison, but I do think that Vaughn's arc is handled pretty well, and like what it drives him towards as far as the series themes of empathy. Although then for the rest of it, when Vaughn is like vowing not to kill, and then, well, he'll do it if he has to, from there on the fights tend to come to convenient ends that don't require him to make that decision of yet.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to talk to you about that, because his decision, one of them is like, he kind of faces up to his own guilt and, sorrow, and decides like, I'm going to forge forward anyway. Which is good.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is he kind of comes out of his dream quest. No, I shouldn't call it that. He has his, he comes out of his,
It's the river scene from Metal Gear Solid 3, which I'm now wondering if Kojima stole from this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something to call it that's not like colonialist
bullshit. Yeah, that's why I caught myself
Yeah.
there and went, no, that's not okay. Vaughn comes out of his little vision with Balthus.
His journey to the center of the mind, if you will.
And it kind of feels like the decision he's come to is very similar to Folken's. Like, I'm going to stop this violence with more violence. Because then he immediately goes to Hitomi, is like, hey, so I need your power. And part of that is him misspeaking like a dumb kid. But part of it is also that he does still kind of see her as like a vehicle of power to help win a war. And I'll be real curious to see, because again, I don't remember the plot. I'll be real curious to see how they address that in the next 6 episodes. Because I do think the parallels between him and Folken are really interesting, but I don't get the sense that the show wants that to be the end game. I think the show is pushing for something where we, is pushing more for forgiveness and love and belief, and like Hitomi's powers, there's that idea of like, when she has faith in somebody, her powers are effective and are used to like help people. And so I'm kind of curious to see how they play that out in the last 6 episodes, because it could get real messy, or they could do a good job with it. We'll see.
I just, this whole this whole part happened because with Alan and Hitomi and Vaughn and the Destiny thing, it was able to happen because Vaughn is an idiot and and said that, like, I need to use your powers instead of, like, I need you.
I care about you and you're important to me, and yeah, I want you around, you know.
Like, I want you by my side.
Treat her like a person, not a tool.
Like, that whole thing. And so, like, when Vaughn is not, the whole thing is, like, when Vaughn is being emotionally honest, good things happen. When Vaughn is being closed off, like, that's when the bad stuff happens.
That's a very good point. Like, when
Vaughn needs to be honest with himself about his own emotions, because when he's not, that sort of leaves things open for the destiny prognostication to come in. That creates a weak point, which I think feeds into the idea that the show is largely about being true to yourself.
Kind of a clever idea at play, especially with Hitomi, and one of the things that Alan's dirtbag father says that kind of pinged with me, and I thought was sort of a wise thing that they threw into the show was he basically says, like, the power to make your wishes come true is useless because most people don't actually know what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that with, again, I kind of talked about this last week too, like, when characters are uncertain, they become more ineffective. And we see that a lot with Hitomi this week, and, you know, her magic fate powers becoming kind of like wibbly because she doesn't really know what she wants. She's not, like, I don't think she's lying to herself. I think she genuinely doesn't know how she feels right now. You know, she cares about Millerna. She wants Millerna to be happy. She's pretty sure she likes Alan, but she's got some weird feels for Vaughn right now that she's not quite sure how to quantify.
Right, like Alan looks like her senpai.
Same voice actor too.
But she has this, like, very close friendship with Vaughn, and she, you know, she maybe doesn't acknowledge to herself, but she definitely thinks Vaughn is cute at this point. Like, yeah, no, everyone just needs to, like, be honest with themselves.
I will say that, like, the other 30% of anime bullshit in this run of episodes is, I know that Vaughn is caught in the whirlpool of the fanfic machine, but he's got very convenient love triangle timing throughout.
I
laughed.
His sad face
in the rain.
That stops immediately after.
Of course it does. The thing that was the moment that I was saying earlier that, like, some of the anime bullshit, like, I feel like the show does a nice job of kind of making it work. The thing I genuinely love about that whole scene, though, is that it's when we complain about, like, oh, that forced romance in that show that didn't need to be there. It literally is a forced romance. You know what I mean? Like, narratively speaking, that is the thing we always complain about. Like, those are all the bullshit cliche tropes, and they happened because somebody else forced them to happen within the story itself, and I kind of love that. So I laughed during that scene a lot because I thought that was clever and fun.
Well, I mean, like Fushigi Yugi, this is a show that dabbles in, you know, adolescent metaphors where who you want to smooch is literally the power that will determine the fate of the world. And also, kids, your intrusive thoughts are real, and they are making life worse.
Yeah, Hitomi's anxiety made manifest is a brutal metaphor that I think we can all kind of go and feel for.
It is one of the 2 spoilers that has stuck with me all of these years, and it's one of those things that if it had been written slightly differently, I would have. It would come off as kind of distasteful to me in terms of, like, oh, you got depression and anxiety. You say, well, you should just try thinking positively. That'll work, yeah. But because it's so, like, grounded in the world, this idea that wishes make reality, and you know, the rest of the metaphor stuff, it ends up coming across a little bit more as wish fulfillment. Like, yeah, your bad thoughts do bad things, the worst fear for an anxious teenager, but also you have this power to demonstrably magically affect the world with your good thoughts, and you know it will work, rather than just it being a bullshit platitude about positive thinking.
Yeah, I love fantasy. I
Right,
love
and I
fantasy
think-
shows that like literalize adolescent fears and concerns, and like you said, kind of that wish fulfillment aspect of like, oh well, maybe that it kind of I guess it's encouraging for the audience is how I would describe it. So
And I think the thing is that it's like, it doesn't. Hitomi feels guilty, but no one tries to make her feel guilty. If that makes sense, like, they say like, yeah, no, like these things have happened because of your power, and you have the stone, and that sucks, because no one can blame you for feeling that way and having those worries. And no one turns around and says, well, try to think good thoughts.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is it's not just...
more like, sucks, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just think good thoughts, be happy because we're uncomfortable with you being anxious or depressed. It's assess your life and take concrete steps, and you will make changes. And I like that. Mm-hmm. I really like Hitomi. I love that, like, because the whole fortune telling scene to me would have been so much more frustrating if she didn't genuinely want Millerna to be happy. Like, she's such a sweet kid.
She really is.
Yeah.
Like, and I like that the scene where she and Millerna and Merle are failing the Bechdel test real hard, is not my favorite scene in the show, but I think it continues to be kind of undercut or underscored. I'm not quite sure which one I should use in this circumstance. By the fact that the three of them genuinely like each other, and we see that all the time. So even when they have this kind of cliche moment of like, well, no, I like him, well, so do I, aw, snap, kind of thing. It doesn't really go anywhere because, like you said, like Hitomi, she does like Alan, or she thinks she likes Alan, but she also likes Millerna. Like, she genuinely likes her. So it's very much like genuine conflicted teen feelings of like, I like somebody that my friend likes. How do I handle that? And so it doesn't fall into like, crappy women be competing tropes as we have discussed in the past.
Yeah, and I do wish, God, I wish they would drop it with Merle, like, especially after we've learned that she is probably a prepubescent child. Like, weirdly, it's after that moment that instead of dialing it into a more, like, sibling-y bond between the two of them, you have that scene where you have the, well, which one do you like scene, and it's like, God, just please stop. Please stop. She doesn't have a chance, and we know it, and this is irritating.
Yeah, but, I mean, I don't know. I think it's fine it doesn't bother me at all in the show because, like, it tracks for me. I understand why Merle likes Vaughn as much as she does. She's 13, by the way. She's 2 years younger than them. Which is, again, it's especially at that age, quite a bit younger, but she's not like 8. She's also a teenager. And there's never any sense that Vaughn reciprocates,
Yeah, Vaughn loves Merle as a friend.
Like, it's not gross to me, it's just irritating in how it's drawn out. Like, it's a trope I don't like, is all.
Sure, that's fine. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That's all. I don't know how to pivot away from that. Who haven't we talked about yet? I feel like I want to talk about Dilandau so bad, but it's going to be really hard for me not to talk about the rest of his arc, because, like, he has a fairly significant scene in this run of episodes, and then he's just, like, gone for the other 5. So I think I'm going to put a pin in that and just talk about him a whole bunch in the last episode.
Real quick. Yeah. Is Dilandau okay?
He's super not okay.
I think extremely not okay this time around. I think we can definitively say.
I don't think he is okay under any definition of the term.
No.
Okay.
He has clearly been fucked with real bad by these alchemist folks that we don't really know anything about, except that they're what's the word? Ominous. They're ominous. And I think at some point, when I can keep the plot in my head long enough to form complete thoughts about it, I think there.
Oh, that's never gonna happen.
Which is why I'm probably never going to write this essay. I think there's something really fascinating going on with like parallels between like Zybok and our heroes. And I've talked a little bit about how I think there's some stuff between Folken and Vaughn, but I think there's some good stuff between Vaughn and Dilandau. And this week, one of the things we see, I think, is both of them sort of dealing with trauma and loss but Vaughn is able to reach out and find people who will support him. And that scene where Hitomi, helps him find the Escaflowne and like shares the burden of the pain with him, is a really good scene of these two like characters of equals coming together. And meanwhile, Dilandau has nobody now and collapses, like just has a complete breakdown. And again, we can't really get into, again, like, clearly this is going to come back. I don't think it's a spoiler to tell folks at home, like, Dilandau's not just gone from the story. He'll be back.
Right. Well, it messes with his part in the destiny prognostication. I think we can say that much.
Yeah, well, and in the very first episode I mentioned that, like, comparatively, Vaughn is struggling with toxic masculinity. Dilandau seems like an embodiment of it, and he's literally been surgically, precisionally fucked with to be that, like, tiny little ball of violent rage. And it's kind of why I'm a little bit more forgiving of him than I probably should be, because he's obviously awful. He's a terrible, murdering, like, ball of violence who is awful even to the men who are his family before they all die horribly. But also, he's also a teenager, and you get the feeling that maybe this has happened before, and every time his programming starts to waver and it breaks his mind a little more, they put him back under the knife.
I mean, I talked earlier about grooming child soldiers, and that's kind of what we do appear to be dealing with here.
Yeah.
My son.
And like you said, like I think the fact that he's 15, like, yeah, he's awful, but he's also a child soldier who has been pretty clearly fucked with very badly. And I agree with you there. I think that makes it a little bit easier to feel sympathy for Dilandau, even when he's being objectively terrible.
Yeah, we're going to put a pin in that, and I'm just going to scream a lot next episode.
It'll be great.
I just want to say that there's some weird imagery around the Destiny prognostication machine.
How so?
Like, it looks like when it shows the shots of, like, the workings of it, it looks like sperm swimming around DNA.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean.
They're birthing a new future.
I mean, there is a lot of organic imagery around the fate stuff, and, like, it's sort of been backgrounded since the early episodes, but there's definitely that tension between newfangled metallic-looking tech and old organic-looking tech, which is better.
Yeah, I mean, Isaac shows up and gives them science to free them from their sadness. And then you look out over Zybok and you're like, are we sure the fascist state is happy? Because I'm not sure I'm sure.
Although those Zybok suits, those Zybok Imlifts, look pretty organic. Just gonna say that again.
They are giant penises. This is true.
What is this? All this like dick-related imagery around
It's almost like the show is maybe having a conversation about toxic masculinity on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Quite
what? Politics and anime.
Maybe it's a stretch.
No. Here nor there, I do love the scene with the Dragon Slayer ghosts. Like, it's so cheesy, but it's also like, oh no, my heart.
It's a really good scene.
I also like that it's not 100% clear if there are literal ghosts, because it's a fantasy verse, there could be, or if that's just like Vaughn's guilt and, trauma manifesting itself.
And the colors are so good, and oh my god, this so pretty.
This show is
There's
so
some
pretty.
really excellent storyboarding and imagery used, and I mean pretty much all the way through the show, but definitely some stretches in these episodes where I just kept being like, hot damn, that's a good shot. So.
And also, like, that scene where Escaflowne is a dragon and falls from the eclipsed moon because of Zybok's ship, and it's so fucking good. Sorry, sometimes I geek out about storyboarding a little.
I think that's totally fair. Again, this is a show that clearly, despite the plot sometimes being incomprehensible, clearly a lot of love was put into it.
Can we talk about Manga Dilandau?
Yes,
Let's talk about Manga Dilandau.
He is weird. It's so weird because, like, I think it's an inferior character writing wise. The design
you could say that about any character in the Escaflowne manga.
Fair. The character design could be interesting, except that it ends up being more like Escaflowne did a whoops, because now Dilandau is the only, like, visibly brown-skinned character, and he's a violent psychopath.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
He's a completely different character in the manga, and I don't remember his deal.
He was maybe a prince of another nation who got taken in by Zybok after he killed his mother, but he killed his mother in self-defense because she tried to murder him, and he has got a lot of issues about that. Vaughn's mom is a way bigger character in the manga. She gets kidnapped early on, and, like, Dilandau carts her around for a while before accidentally murdering her because they're in a hallucination forest, and he thinks it's his mom trying to kill him again. So then Dilandau joins up with Vaughn's party for a while, and you think it's going to be like I am a, morally ambiguous anti-hero warrior type thing, but then they decide to drop that plot thread entirely, and he winds up going back into violent murder gay town to kind of get back into a parallel track with the anime version, and then he dies, and it sucks.
It's bad.
Yeah.
There's nothing good about it.
No.
Oh, and his version of violent murder gay is that instead of him having a team who dies and he's real broke up about it, he stabs he has another freak out and stabs the only other person who was giving a fuck about him, who is, like, the younger recruit who kind of idolized him and maybe had a crush. It sucks so
Good
much.
Stuff. I'm glad I've never read it, and I'm never going to.
You don't have any idle curiosity to...
No, I feel that you have painted a word picture for me, and I'm good.
Yeah, it's bad. Don't read the manga, y'all. Don't do it. I think it might be out of print anyway.
Yeah, but it's cheap on Amazon, but still don't get it.
Yeah, don't pay zero monies for this.
But also don't pirate.
Yeah, don't do that.
Just leave it alone. Just watch the anime, like we are right now. Much better.
Yes.
Despite some frustrations. Yes. Oh, I remembered one other thing I wanted to bring up. And I don't have an answer for this, but I'm kind of curious what you guys think about this. During the flashback dream sequences, I should say, I thought it was noteworthy that both Vaughn and Hitomi's sort of flashback moments are... Well, Vaughn's kind of a mix. So Hitomi's is like maternal attachment, right? It's her grandma. And it's characterized by, trust and love, and, like, they clearly had this strong bond. Her grandma encourages her to, like, have belief in others. Vaughn has kind of a dual one, because he has, is it Balthus? Am I mispronouncing his name over and over again? Balgus, thank you. He has the one with him, and then he has the one with his mom. So he kind of has a combination of the two, and he is a character who seems to be kind of fighting with this balance between, like, masculine aggression and more feminine-coded, like, compassion and caring. And then Alan's is purely of this paternal attachment that is completely characterized by, like, resentment and anger. And I just noticed this thing, and then watching the trajectories of their characters and, like, the sort of the, what's the word I'm looking for? The family members and mentor figures who are kind of like the ghosts of their past that they carry with them, and how that affects their characters. And that there does seem to be kind of a gendered role situation here, and the fact that Alan is becoming increasingly ineffective and shitty, whereas Hitomi and Vaughn seem to be, trying to navigate their way, into being, like, better, more rounded people. Something I noticed.
That is definitely a thing that is going on. I will say, shout out to them doing that thing that I kind of hate in anime, especially when they haven't earned it, where he's like, no, you really loved your dad all along, and we're looking for a way to forgive him. For what? Being an asshole just because he had a good reason for it?
Yeah, that was one of those points where I'm like, I disagree with you here. I don't think, like, I understand. I think I get where Hitomi's coming from in terms of, like, Alan probably is searching for some kind of reason to, like, make peace with this thing that's been pissing him off forever. But I don't think his dad deserves forgiveness.
No.
I think Alan needs to make peace with it, because I don't think he's ever going to be able to move on from the fact that he just jumps into the arms of anybody who shows him affection. I don't think that's good. But I don't think forgiveness is necessarily the answer. So I think that is one place, and I think the anime is probably pushing it that way. And that is one place with the series where I pretty strongly disagree with them.
I feel like forgiveness is one of those is a cultural one of those cultural issues, like a less obvious one, because forgiveness is very heavily emphasized in Japan. When I was living there, like during the orientation, they were like, "Yeah, no, like forgiveness and apologizing is a really big deal." Like sometimes they were like, one factoid they gave us was saying that in a car crash, who has to deal with the insurance more and who's considered responsible, whether or not you apologize can be factored into it. And not apologizing. In the U.S., apparently it can be factored into it because if you apologize, it's an admission of fault and that can hurt you. But if you don't apologize in Japan, like that can be like seen as, I don't know exactly what it can be seen as, but they told us that not apologizing makes you look way worse in the case and you're more likely to come off to get the short end of the stick. So always apologize and hope for forgiveness.
I mean,
so I think that is a more cultural thing. So
I see what you're saying. Having grown up in a white Midwestern Catholic family, that's what you just described is pretty much legit how I was raised too. Like forgiveness is very much like top priority. And most of the time I would agree with that, but like, and I think that's something that I've kind of had to come to terms with myself over the past, I don't know, 5 to 10 years of adulthood, is that sometimes making peace doesn't necessarily mean forgiveness, and it's mm-hmm. complicated, right? Like, I think that's always my instinct too, is like, well, you should be able to forgive somebody else for their faults and move on from that. And then having spoken to people who have gone through some pretty terrible situations that I certainly have not, I've had to kind of reorient my thought process on that. And that's the position I'm coming from. Like, I get where the show is coming from, because I've absolutely been there, and I've reached a point now where I'm like, I'm still not sure I agree with you. Like,
no, absolutely. It's, it's just,
And obviously family is a huge part of it too. And again, that's a culture I came from as well, where it was like, well, no, I mean, you should forgive them for it because they're family, they're, this or that. I think that was very common in the particular subculture I grew up in as well. I see where it's coming from, like very much so. I agree that we need to like take into account the cultural differences, but at the same time, I think sometimes we overplay those cultural differences because, again, I relate to that very strongly. And I'm still saying that maybe Alan doesn't need to forgive his dad. So,
good combo. I'll bring us in for the thing now. Yeah, so that about wraps us up for this discussion, I think. And next time we'll be watching the last stretch of the series, episodes 21 to 26, which there will be probably, if nothing else, emotions. I think we can all guarantee that. A lot of stuff will happen. So yeah, if you're watching along with us, that's still on Funimation or on the Blu-rays that you purchased. Don't do piracy, kids. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. If you liked this episode, you can find more episodes by searching for Anime Feminist on SoundCloud. If you really liked what you heard, you can toss us $1 on Patreon. Every little bit helps us to pay our contributors and our editors and move towards making the site a better and more, making the... Sometimes words do bad. Making the site a better and brighter place. And thank you so much. It will have been a little while ago by the time this goes up, but as we're recording, we have just passed our crowdfunding goal to help make the site more accessible, and we are
in the second day
so excited.
It was amazing. Y'all are amazing. Seriously.
Yeah.
I still don't actually believe it's true. I keep looking at the numbers and just going, like, I'm just kind of in shock. Happy shock. So thank y'all. Seriously.
we're super excited to be able to do that and to make the site more accessible to more people and to make transcripts for these podcasts. Yay! But yes, so in the meantime, if you want to hear more from our contributors, you can check out our website at www.animefeminist.com, or you can check us out on social media. We're on Facebook at AnimeFem, on Tumblr at AnimeFeminist, and on Twitter at AnimeFeminist. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. And remember, your feelings matter in that you are completely ruining the world around you with everything you... Wait, no.
No. That can't be right.